Welcome to JGTCR, I'm Cope, and today we are tuning the BMW M4 14. Let's get into it. This is a heavy vehicle with a good torquey bottom end, and we all know what that means. Wheel spin city. When slides do occur, the weight this beamer carries can cause it to drag itself off the circuit. And if drifting was not a common occurrence with this M4, it wouldn't be such an issue. Unfortunately, loss of traction can occur at any moment, so we must always be vigilant. In addition to our issues with traction, the handling is also not great. It handles well enough to maneuver the vehicle, but it's difficult to say that it's good. The steering itself is more than a little lazy. It almost seems as though it has a delayed response to our inputs. This is more than likely due to the weight, but it is something we have to deal with when driving. The power available is solid, but the power delivery is far too strong in the bottom end. We need to ensure that we are especially smooth on throttle inputs, especially in lower gears and lower speeds. The brakes are the best part of the performance of this vehicle. They are extremely stable and do a great job of slowing the vehicle down, especially considering how much weight it feels like we are carrying. Let's collect our time. (7 minutes 30.8 seconds). On to the race tune. Our first point of interest when looking at the race tune for our M4 is the manual adjustment in the transmission section. We adjusted our top speed to 380 km an hour, but our first 5 gears were clustered at the bottom of our speed range. This resulted in a lot of shifting at lower speeds and a lot of wheel spin. So all we did here is space out the gearing evenly among the gears, leaving a touch more overhead in the final 2 gears. Our tune settings are a touch more than mild, but nothing crazy. We had some issues with understeer, and our front suspension settings reflect that. The increase in power also meant we had to face more wheel spin, but thankfully our gearing, ballast and downforce settings have reduced how aggressively loose the tail end on this M4 was. Let's hit the Nürburgring. Without a tune, this BMW M4 was very sloppy indeed. In fact, there were some fears that this vehicle may have been a bit too far gone to be able to do anything constructive with. But after a tune, it has more than proved us wrong, because it handles like a champ. If we're being honest, the handling is far too sharp, nimble and agile for a vehicle of this stature. It zigs and zags easily as we request without hesitation or question. It could even be said that it handles a touch too well. The power delivery is still too aggressive, but the custom gearing has dulled much of the bite the tail had pre-tuning. That being said, there is still plenty of bite available in the higher RPM. This can easily kick the tail out aggressively if left unchecked. This M4 seems to thrive in the bottom end of the rev range, where there's plenty of torque and pull. When cornering, it's best to stay in higher gears and let the turbo do its work. And on the long straights, go wide open throttle and unleash that peaky top end. The brakes work well and are stable, but due to the weight and excess power, it can take some time to slow down, so we must adjust accordingly. Let's collect our time. 6 minutes 14.3 seconds. On to the drift tune. There were not many changes needed to make the M4 drift. The majority of the work was done by the body height adjustment and the natural frequency. The rest was just support work to make it all run a bit smoother. Let's drift Suzuka. The BMW M4 is another one of those vehicles that with the race tune and just a change of tyres drifts well. But naturally our tune has made the M4 lean into drifting a bit more. It is a hefty vehicle and we can feel it in the car's movements on the track and while drifting. The weight is a double-edged sword. It does make us more stable during drift, however, it also makes the car feel lazy and lethargic in response to our inputs. The slow, overpowered drift style is what is needed when sliding this Beamer. So plan moves well in advance and get those slow transitions ready, because that is where this car thrives. The power is aggressive in delivery, but very much controllable. This M4 loves the chunky mid to mid-high rev range for drift. But a word of caution, should we venture too high in the rev range, the tail end can whip itself around without warning, so no bouncing off limiter at full lock. If we stay on top of throttle modulation, this Beamer will always be in our control. It's engine swap time. In factory trim with just the engine swap, the M4 is a super fun car. It's very slide and tail happy, but it's easy to control when drifting. So much so, in fact, that we considered uploading a race drift lap around the Nürburgring. But let's save all that nonsense for Suzuka. The handling post-engine swap is quite good. It has not suffered too much imbalance from the engine conversion, and it still feels like a reasonably stock car. There is some very light understeer we need to contend with at times, but for the most part, what we experience is oversteer. The power delivery is very aggressive when it comes on full song. This can easily bring the tail out, and how aggressively depends on our throttle modulation. Fortunately, the drift is smooth and easy to control as long as we remain within the correct rev range. If the RPM is too high, the tail end is more likely to drag the vehicle off circuit, so keep RPM low and it's a drift haven. The brakes also do a remarkable job considering the conversion, and the braking capabilities are that of what we would expect from a factory vehicle. Let's collect our time. 7 minutes 26 seconds flat. And now the race tune. For this race tune, we focused on getting traction to the rear wheels. The downforce and ballast helped immensely, but we also had to call on the suspension to help us out. Interestingly, with the engine swap installed, there was no need to make manual adjustments to the transmission. Let's see how it performs. The M4 with the engine swap is still a heavy vehicle and it lets you know it. However, it is better balanced than its factory engined counterpart and more stable. The handling post-tune is on the money and it responds appropriately to our inputs. The aggressive power delivery has been subdued considerably. We can now confidently attack turns without fear of tail sliding or Mr. Ploughing off the road. The engine swap has managed to give us a more usable version of the M4. Let's jump ahead and collect our time. 6 minutes 14.4 seconds. And now the drift tune. With a better balanced M4, we were able to be more aggressive with our drift tune. This can be clearly seen in our suspension setup, but more so in our differential settings. Let's drift Suzuka. When it came to setting up the BMW M4 with the engine swap, we first tried the non-engine swap tune, but it was not a good fit. The tail end was too jittery on track and it had a very nasty bite to it. This rendition of the M4 prefers a softer tail end. This makes for smoother, more controlled transitions and does away with unpredictable and aggressive movements. We can now confidently approach turns and initiate drift, knowing full well we will be in complete control. The handling is very precise and affords us quite a bit of maneuverability on circuit. The power and power delivery are very well matched for the application. Be it low RPM or bouncing off the limiter, this M4 has got us covered. There is a very nice flow we can achieve once we get used to driving this vehicle. It definitely has what it takes to be competitive and would do extremely well in traffic conditions such as tandems or drift battles in online lobbies. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing!